Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. And if your sensitive kid is struggling to follow your advice and take deep breaths when they are close to hyperventilating, this show is for you. We're going to make it quick today because I really want to just target this one specific issue that a lot of parents get stuck on when it comes down to advising your kiddo who is in the middle of a meltdown or who is getting so upset to take a deep breath, to slow down, to calm down. So let's go. Here at MTC, we help parents of highly sensitive kids eliminate daily meltdowns in as little as 8 weeks. And some of the questions that we hear from parents are, that are very common is, is what you're going to teach going to be different? Because my kid won't listen to me when I try to teach them calm down tools. And so I want to talk about the difference between a tool and a tactic. And the intention behind the tool is really important, as well as the delivery and the timing behind that tool. And so specifically, we will talk about the tool of breathing, and then the tactic of telling your kid when they're upset that they need to breathe. So that's an approach, right? It's different than the actual tool. So think about it like this: the tool of a screwdriver and the tactic of using a screwdriver to get a nail into the wall. All right. And that's basically the metaphor that I want you to think about when your child is, I just can't, right? Or he just hit me and I'm going to hit him back, right? Whatever it is that's happening. If your kid is hitting, kicking, yelling, throwing things, running away, slamming doors, hiding under their bed, refusing, sobbing, having meltdowns, full body on the floor, just all over the place where you just can't get a word in edgewise. And in that moment, you notice your kid just needs to freaking breathe. I want to talk about that moment, because when you see the level of calm that your child isn't accessing, you're seeing a gap in that moment. You're seeing your child struggle, and you want them to be doing something that is less about their struggle, more about their effective management. And so when you're coaching them in that moment to use a coping skill, if they haven't practiced that in that moment, or if they are not learned in the necessity of these skills, then that will create an even bigger mismatch. It's one of the reasons why we don't teach reassurance, for example, because when your child is upset and they're telling you that they're sad and you're saying it's going to be better soon, your child is here in the moment. Your children live in the present moment. They don't live in the future, and they don't have the wisdom to live in the future, and they're not receptive to your wisdom about how the future could show up, especially if their emotions are so intense, high highs, low lows. And what happens is they feel invalidated in that moment. And it's the same thing when you're coaching your kid to use a skill that they don't have. So I liken this in another metaphor that's really useful is trying to teach your kid to swim when they're drowning. When your child is hyperventilating or they're just sobbing at the point where it's clear to you that they're not catching their breath, they're not taking deep breaths, they're not effective. You're treating it as if they are running a race, and you're saying, hey, slow down, breathe from your belly. They're running a race. There's an accomplishment they're achieving, which is an effective endurance through a race, right? And so that type of coaching would be appropriate if your child had the vision for themselves and the effective identity of being like a champion, right? Like if they believed that they were someone who solved the problems well or had high self-esteem and they were effective, then they would be receptive perception. Their perception would be, my parent is here to help me make this better. My parent is here to help me feel better because I'm on my way to feel better even in this hard moment. So when you're coaching your child in that moment as if they are running a race and saying, hey, breathe from your belly. I don't know if you've ever run a marathon versus a sprint, or run in longer than sprint behavior, or studied athletes who do sprint running versus endurance running. But sprint breathing is like you have to create power, and there's short breaths associated with that. And especially if you're running from a bear yourself, you're going to be panting heavier, right? Compared to endurance breathing, where you're going such a long distance. You have to take big, deep, belly-focused breaths in order to survive, because your heart rate it can't tolerate like a super high beating heart, because you're gonna quit. Like you're gonna pop something in there, right? I'm not a doctor. So just recognize that if you were panting for an entire marathon, you would run out of air. Yeah? Okay? So you only pant if you're racing short distances or if you're panicking. And so when your child is taking those short breaths, they're panicking. They're not racing to an outcome. They don't see it in front of them. But if you're coaching them in that moment to take a deep breath, they're not hearing you in the way that you are expecting them to hear you. So this is a situation where you're speaking an ineffective language. You're speaking Spanish and they're trying to tell you something's going on in French. And while they're both Romance languages, I think, they're very different from each other. They're very different. We're not talking about Spanish and Italian, right? We're talking about Spanish and French. And so they're like sort of in the same angle, but they're just total mismatch in that respect. So, I'm not a linguist, so hopefully you can follow me appropriately, but I want you to understand the difference in clear language, because play is the child's language, and you can't be in that moment working playfully to distract your kid out of that, because they'll also feel invalidated. But you will need to playfully support your child in learning how they can take deep breaths outside of these moments, so that when it's time, hey, take a deep breath, slow down, come on. And your fervency to get them to feel better doesn't feel like a mismatch. My parent can't tolerate then when I'm in distress, and so they just take control. If you are in, God forbid, an attack situation where your child is hyperventilating and they're getting loud, and there's like an aggressor around the corner and they have to be quiet, that would be appropriate, where you would say, hey, listen, you can't wail right now. Like, you know, there's somebody around. You and I both know that when your kid's brother hits them and then they're super mad and upset and they chuck something, and you catch the fact that they chucked something, and then they feel shame and overwhelmment and sadness and disappointment, in that moment, they're wailing. And they're not trying, you don't need to keep them from this, adversary who might cause physical harm, right? So your response is a mismatch to the situation. You might be embarrassed, especially if it's happening at a park, or if it's, you're on your way to school, or there's time sensitive needs where you need to get to work or whatever, or they have to go to soccer practice. But I really want you to hear me when I am teaching you that your delivery and the timing of that tactic is way more important than whether or not you're using the tactic in the first place. So these are definitely factors that play into it. The second thing that is really important to understand is that the type of breathing that you're teaching, which is just to take a big full body deep breath, is actually going to be insufficient in helping your child actually calm down. So if they've tried that once or twice and they know their body enough to be, introspective, and they're present to the moment, which when kids are melting down, they often aren't. However, if they are, and it didn't work, then you need to trust that you're using the wrong tool with your kiddo in that moment, and it's not effective. Because when your child is in crisis mode, taking deep breaths is not the most effective way to slow the nervous system down. And it will feel very, very frustrating for both of you when you're just telling your kid to calm down. I mean, think about it. If you're upset, if you've ever been upset with an adult loved one, and you're, say, for example, you raise your voice because you are not entirely intentional in your upsetness, and you say, I can't believe you did this again. And the person goes to you, calm down. How do you feel? I don't know about you, but when I've ever received that feedback, I have felt like I wanted to let fire to the situation, not to the person. I didn't become, any interest in unaliving anybody, just for an understanding there. But the rage was there, right? The rage was there. I didn't see, I didn't see a path forward when being told that my anger is unjustified or inappropriate or unnecessary. Now, it doesn't mean that the behavior, like if I was like when I was younger, using ineffective language, like what the heck or whatever, or not saying that, right? Like if I was using disrespectful language, I did need to be there. There did need to be a boundary set forth with whomever I was speaking to. However, the process of that boundary, like, don't speak to me like that, is very different than calm down, right? Which is trying to control my emotion in that moment. And obviously both parties are ineffective, and that communication pattern is going to be, isn't going to work. So when we're talking about working together to hold safe boundaries, I'm not talking about letting your kid just ride it out. I'm talking about being able to understand that if your effort to help them settle their body and settle their emotions in that moment isn't effective, it doesn't mean they're not receptive. It doesn't mean that they are sociopathic. It doesn't mean that they're sadistic or masochistic, where they want themselves to suffer. It doesn't mean they lack empathy. It could very well be that you're using the wrong tool in the wrong time and in the wrong way, right? And so if you want to learn more about what it takes to turn this around, and you want to have your child be receptive more often to the skills that you know they need, then I encourage you to go to meganthomsoncoaching.com/3mistakes, the number 3, the word mistakes, and learn about what it takes to turn this around. So that training, I covered the 3 mistakes most parents make when they're trying to stop the meltdown cycle in their family. If their child is hitting, kicking, screaming, or internalizing, I'm the worst, shutting down, all of those behaviors, they have the same root cause. And parents can get really stuck in trying to approach it. And then on that training, I also talk about what it takes to turn this around. So if you want to dive deeper into this training, go ahead over to that site. It's free. And you can watch the training. You can also learn more about what it looks like to work with our team, the results that we get for our clients, as well as what it looks like to work with us in our programming to stop the meltdown cycle in your household. So the principles relate to everybody stuck in this pattern, whether you work with us or not. You still need to make those changes that I teach in the training. So go ahead over to meganthomsoncoaching.com/ the number 3, the word mistakes, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye. Oops, let me see. Let me show that image there. Hold on. Here it is. There it is on the video, the link, meganthomsoncoaching.com /3mistakes. See you later.